The old man's hands trembled violently as he stared at the young man standing before him, and tears began streaming down his weathered face without warning. His daughter, confused and frightened, reached for her father's arm, but he couldn't speak because the words were trapped somewhere between his heart and his throat. Yusuf felt his stomach twist into knots as he watched this stranger, his future father-in-law, look at him with a mixture of anguish and recognition that made no sense at all. "Baba, what's wrong?" the girl asked, her voice cracking with worry. The man opened his mouth, closed it, then whispered words that would shatter everything Yusuf thought he knew about his life. "This young man, he is my son." The room spun, and Yusuf felt the ground beneath him turn to water, because how could the father of the woman he loved, the woman he wanted to marry, possibly be his own father? The impossible was happening right before his eyes, and somewhere in a small rented house across town, Amina had no idea that the secret she'd buried for 23 years was about to explode and destroy the one person she'd sacrificed everything to protect. But to understand how they arrived at this devastating moment, we need to go back to where it all began, to a dusty morning in a small village, to a young woman holding a baby, and to a decision that would haunt 3 lives forever. Amina's hands shook so badly that she could barely fasten the rusted clasp on her suitcase, and the metallic click sounded impossibly loud in the silence of the early morning. The pale light creeping through the cracked window seemed to judge her as she moved quietly around the room, gathering the few belongings she owned. Her 6-month-old son, Yusuf, slept peacefully against her chest, wrapped in a thin cloth, completely unaware that his mother was about to make a choice that would reshape his entire existence. She paused at the doorway and looked back one last time at the small room she'd shared with Khalid for the past year. The memories flooded her mind, some sweet, most bitter, and she felt her resolve strengthen because she couldn't live like this anymore, couldn't spend another day feeling invisible in her own marriage, couldn't bear another moment of his mother's cruel words and his silent acceptance of them. She'd tried, God knows she'd tried, but love alone wasn't enough when respect was absent and dignity was trampled daily. Khalid was still sleeping in the next room, his deep breathing audible through the thin walls, and Amina was grateful for that small mercy because she didn't have the strength for another confrontation, another round of empty promises, another plea for patience that would change nothing. She adjusted Yusuf on her hip, picked up her suitcase with her free hand, and stepped out into the cool morning air. The dusty road stretched before her like a path to freedom, and she walked quickly, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure someone would hear it and stop her. She'd made it perhaps 50 meters when a voice called out from behind. "Amina, Amina, where are you going so early?" She turned to see Mama Ngozi, one of the village women, emerging from her compound with a water pot balanced on her head. The woman's eyes were sharp and curious, taking in the suitcase, the baby, and Amina's determined expression. Amina stopped and met the woman's gaze directly because she wanted no misunderstanding about what she was doing. "Mama Ngozi, please, I need you to do something for me. Go to Khalid's house later this morning and give him a message." "What message?" Mama Ngozi asked, setting down her water pot and moving closer. "Tell him I'm no longer interested in this marriage," Amina said, and her voice was steady even though everything inside her was trembling. "Tell him I've gone to my father's house and I won't be coming back. Tell him it's over." Mama Ngozi's mouth fell open in shock and she grabbed Amina's arm urgently. "Amina, what are you saying? You cannot just leave your marriage like this. What about your husband? What about your vows?" Amina gently pulled her arm free, and there was something hard and final in her eyes that made Mama Ngozi step back. "I've made my decision. Just deliver the message, please." She turned and continued walking, and this time she didn't look back, not even when she heard Mama Ngozi calling after her, warning her about the consequences, reminding her about tradition and duty and shame. Amina had heard all those words before, had used them to cage herself for too long, and now she was done listening. The journey to her father's village took 3 hours by bus, and Yusuf cried for most of it because he was hungry and uncomfortable, but Amina barely noticed because her mind was racing ahead to the welcome she imagined waiting for her. Her mother would be upset at first, yes, but surely she would understand once Amina explained everything. Her father would be angry, certainly, but he loved her and would eventually accept her decision. Her brothers and sisters would support her because family was supposed to stand together in times of crisis. She was wrong about all of it. Hey my people, I need to pause right here for just a moment because this story is about to get even more intense, and I want to make sure you're ready for what's coming. If you're feeling this story so far, if Amina's pain is touching your heart, do me a favor and drop a like on this video right now. Comment below and tell me where you're watching from: Lagos, Abuja, London, New York. I want to know. My storytelling family is global. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button because we're just getting started with this 5-part series, and trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. Now let's get back to Amina, because the reception waiting for her at her father's house was nothing like what she expected, and what happened there would push her down a dark path she never imagined walking. Amina's mother, Amina, opened the door and her face immediately hardened when she saw her daughter standing there with a suitcase and a baby. There was no warm embrace, no concern in her eyes, just cold disappointment that hit Amina like a physical blow. "What are you doing here?" Amina asked, and her tone made it clear this wasn't a welcome. "Mama, I've left Khalid," Amina said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I can't stay in that marriage anymore. His mother makes my life hell and he does nothing to protect me. I've come home." Amina's expression didn't soften even slightly, and when she spoke, each word was sharp and deliberate. "You have married, Amina. You no longer belong here. This is not your home anymore. Your home is with your husband, and that's where you need to go back to right now." Amina felt her heart crack because this was her mother, the woman who'd given birth to her, nursed her, raised her, and now she was being turned away like a stranger. "Mama, please, just let me stay for a little while. I just need some time to think, to figure things out." "There's nothing to figure out," her mother said firmly. "You made your choice when you got married. Marriage is not easy for any woman, but we endure it. We make it work. We don't run away at the first sign of trouble." Amina's father appeared behind his wife, and his face was equally stern. "Your mother is right, Amina. You cannot stay here. What will people say? That we raised a daughter who abandons her marriage? That we allow our married daughter to come back and live with us like a child? No, you must return to your husband and work out your problems." The tears Amina had been holding back finally broke free, streaming down her face as she clutched Yusuf tighter. "Baba, please, I can't go back there. You don't understand what I've been through. His mother treats me like a servant, like I'm worthless. Khalid doesn't defend me. I have no peace, no respect, nothing. Please just let me stay." Her father's voice rose, and the anger in it made Yusuf wake up and start crying. "Every marriage has problems, Amina. Do you think your mother had it easy with me? Do you think any woman has it easy? You take your vows seriously, you pray, you endure, and you make it work. That's what responsible women do." "I won't go back," Amina said, and there was steel in her voice now, matching her father's intensity. "This is my father's house, and I have every right to be here. I'm your daughter, your blood, and you're telling me I'm not welcome? You're choosing tradition over your own child." The argument escalated quickly, voices rising, accusations flying, and soon Amina's siblings emerged from different parts of the compound, drawn by the commotion. Some tried to mediate, others took sides, but the consensus was clear. Amina had crossed a line by leaving her marriage, and she couldn't expect her family to support that decision. Days turned into weeks, and the tension in the house became unbearable because Amina refused to leave and her family refused to accept her presence. Every meal was eaten in hostile silence, every interaction was loaded with resentment, and the atmosphere was so thick with conflict that even little Yusuf seemed to sense it, crying more than usual and refusing to settle. Amina's brothers finally had enough, and they came to her with an ultimatum that she would never forget. "Amina, you have to leave. You're tearing this family apart. Either go back to your husband or find somewhere else to live, but you cannot stay here anymore." Amina looked at them, these men who'd played with her as children, protected her from bullies, shared their food with her when times were hard. And she saw only strangers now, strangers bound by the chains of tradition that valued social appearance over human suffering. "Over my dead body will I return to that marriage," she said quietly, and the finality in those words made her brothers exchange uncomfortable glances. So Amina left, and this time there was no village to walk to, no family compound to seek refuge in, only the cold reality of being truly alone in the world. She found a small, rundown house in a nearby town, a place with cracked walls and a leaking roof that she could barely afford with the money she'd saved secretly during her marriage. The rent consumed most of her savings, and she had no job, no skills, nothing but her determination and her son. To survive, Amina took whatever work she could find, and most of it was brutal, back-breaking labor that left her exhausted and broken by day's end. She hauled sand at construction sites, washed clothes for wealthy families, cleaned gutters, carried loads, anything that would put food in her mouth and keep a roof over Yusuf's head. There was no time for tenderness, no energy for the careful attention a growing child needs, only the relentless grind of survival that consumed everything she had. Meanwhile, Khalid searched desperately for his wife and son because he loved Amina despite everything that had gone wrong between them, and he wanted to make things right, wanted to be a father to Yusuf, wanted to rebuild what they'd lost. He sent messages through mutual friends, traveled to her father's village only to be turned away, searched every town within 100 kilometers, but Amina had disappeared completely, and she intended to keep it that way. Years passed like this, years of struggle and sacrifice, years of Amina working herself to the bone while Yusuf grew up in the shadows of her pain. She never spoke about Khalid, never mentioned his name, and when Yusuf finally became old enough to ask questions, her answers were like knives designed to cut away any curiosity about his father. "Mummy, can you tell me who my father is?" Yusuf asked one evening when he was 7 years old, his young voice innocent and hopeful. "All my friends have fathers. Where is mine? I want to know." Amina stopped what she was doing, and when she turned to face her son, there was something cold and dead in her eyes that frightened him. "You don't have a father," she said flatly, and the words hung in the air like a curse. "But everyone has a father," Yusuf insisted, confusion and hurt warring in his expression. "Did he die? Where is he?" "I said you don't have a father," Amina repeated, her voice rising with an anger that had nothing to do with Yusuf and everything to do with wounds that had never healed. "Stop asking me about this. There's nothing to know." That conversation planted something dark and hollow in Yusuf's heart, a sense of incompleteness that would follow him for years, a question mark where other children had certainty. He learned to stop asking, but the absence of his father became a silent presence in his life, shaping his identity in ways neither he nor Amina understood. When Yusuf turned 18, he left the small town for Lagos, driven by the same survival instinct that had pushed his mother to work herself to exhaustion. The city was massive and overwhelming, but Yusuf was determined and resourceful, and by God's grace and sheer persistence, he found his footing. He worked multiple jobs, educated himself, built connections, and slowly, painfully, carved out a decent life. And then he met her, a girl with kind eyes and a beautiful smile who made him feel, for the first time in his life, like he was complete. They fell in love the way young people do, quickly and intensely, and when the time came for formal introductions, Yusuf traveled to Abuja to meet her family, nervous and excited about the future he imagined building with her. But the moment he walked into that house and stood before her father, everything he thought he knew about his life began to crumble, because the old man looked at him with tears streaming down his face, and the words he spoke next would reveal a truth so devastating that Yusuf would wish he'd never asked about his father at all. Was this man really his father? And if he was, what did that mean for the woman Yusuf loved, the woman he wanted to marry? The answer would destroy them all before the sun set on that terrible day. Khalid couldn't stop the tears, and he didn't even try because after 23 years of searching, praying, and wondering if his son was even alive, Yusuf was standing right in front of him, grown into a man, strong and handsome, and completely unaware that the ground beneath his feet was about to open up and swallow everything he believed about himself. The silence in the room was suffocating, and Khalid's daughter, Yusuf's half-sister, though neither of them knew it yet, looked from her father to her boyfriend with growing horror, because she could see the truth forming in her father's eyes before he even spoke the words. "Baba, what do you mean he's your son?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, and the tremor in it betrayed the fear of an answer she wasn't ready to hear. Khalid's wife, Amina, rushed into the room from the kitchen, drawn by the commotion, and when she saw her husband's tears and the stricken expression on her daughter's face, she knew immediately that something catastrophic was unfolding. "Khalid, what's happening here? What are you saying?" Yusuf felt his legs weaken, and he had to grab the back of a chair to steady himself because this couldn't be real, couldn't be possible, couldn't be happening. "Sir, I think there's been some mistake," he said, his voice cracking with desperation. "You don't know me, we've never met before today. How can you say I'm your son?" Khalid wiped his face with the back of his hand and took a shaky breath, and when he spoke, each word carried the weight of decades of pain and loss. "Your name is Yusuf, correct, and your mother's name is Amina." The room tilted sideways, and Yusuf felt his heart stop because nobody outside his small circle knew his mother's name. Nobody in Lagos or Abuja should have had any connection to his past. And yet this stranger, this man who was supposed to become his father-in-law, was speaking his mother's name like he'd carried it in his mouth for years, tasting its bitterness with every breath. "How do you know my mother?" Yusuf managed to ask, though his throat felt like it was closing. "Because she was my wife," Khalid said, and the words fell like bombs into the center of the room, destroying everything they touched. "Because I am your father, and I have been searching for you since you were 6 months old." The girl Yusuf loved, whose name was Zainab, let out a strangled cry and backed away from both men as if distance could somehow undo what she'd just heard. "No, no, no, this can't be true. Yusuf, tell him he's wrong. Tell him your father is someone else. Tell him anything." But Yusuf couldn't speak because his entire world was collapsing inward, and all he could think about was his mother's cold voice saying, "You don't have a father," and the years of emptiness he'd carried because of those words. And now it turned out she'd been lying all along, lying while his real father was out there somewhere looking for him, and the cruelty of it all was too much to process. Amina moved to her daughter's side and wrapped her arms around Zainab protectively, her eyes fixed on Khalid with a mixture of shock and something else, a deep, old sadness that suggested she'd always known this ghost from his past might return someday. "Khalid, are you absolutely certain? Look at this young man carefully. Are you sure he's your son?" Khalid nodded, and fresh tears spilled down his weathered cheeks because there was no doubt in his mind, no possibility of error. "I would know my son anywhere. He has my father's eyes, the same chin, the same way of standing, and his mother's name is Amina. How many Aminas could there be who had a son named Yusuf and disappeared 23 years ago?" Yusuf finally found his voice, and it came out harsh and angry because anger was easier than the devastating pain threatening to consume him. "If you're really my father, why did my mother tell me I didn't have one? Why did she say you were dead? Why did she refuse to speak about you my entire life?" "Because she left me," Khalid said simply, and the raw honesty in his voice cut through Yusuf's anger like a blade. "She took you and walked away when you were just a baby, and she never gave me a chance to explain, never let me make things right, never allowed me to be your father." "That's a lie," Yusuf shouted, and his hands were shaking with rage because he couldn't accept this version of events, couldn't believe his mother, who'd sacrificed everything for him, who'd worked herself to exhaustion to keep him fed and clothed, could be the villain in this story. "My mother wouldn't just leave for no reason. If she left, you must have done something terrible to her." Khalid flinched as if he'd been struck, and he lowered his head because Yusuf's accusation contained a truth he'd spent years trying to reconcile. "You're right, I failed her. I failed both of you, but not in the way you think." Fam, I need to stop right here because I can see some of you in the comments already asking questions, already taking sides, already deciding who's right and who's wrong in this situation. But before we continue with Khalid's confession, I need you to do something for me. If this story is gripping your heart, if you're feeling the weight of what's happening to Yusuf and Zainab right now, smash that like button and let me know you're invested. Drop a comment telling me what you think. Is Amina justified in what she did, or did she go too far? I want to hear from my people. And if you haven't subscribed yet, What are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button because we're only on episode 2 of 5, and I promise you, this story is going to take turns you never saw coming.